new city police chief arrives. Construction begins on the waterfront art gallery and a massive new jail. And the local pulp and paper mill gets a new owner. Stay with us as over the next hour, we recap the top news stories of 2023. I'm Riley McManus, and thanks for joining us for TBT News Year in Review. January began with the abrupt retirement of suspended police chief Sylvie Hoth. Hoth was charged in June of 2022 with discreditable conduct and deceit related to her actions regarding an internal probe launched against police board member Georgianne Morso. She was suspended with full pay. Then, just weeks before her misconduct hearing was scheduled to begin, she submitted her letter of resignation. Police leadership had also been under fire for numerous flawed death investigations involving Indigenous people. NAN's Deputy Grand Chief wanted Hoth to face responsibility for her actions.
And to me, this is very disturbing. There has to be a process where she needs to be held accountable, and that applies to any other Thunder Bay Police Services as well. I represent the people that and the families who are part of this reinvestigation, many of those that are NAN citizens. This is very upsetting.
The route for the Waasigan transmission line had residents in Kaministiquia upset. They started holding emergency meetings in January after learning the power line would run right through their properties.
And we're going to be a member of the community, just like any other, any other building or business. We want to be a good neighbor.
That comment last week from Hydro One's Daniel Leviton is in stark contrast to the stories that were shared Wednesday night at the Kaministiquia Community Centre, as over 50 area residents came together to voice their displeasure with the proposed Waasigan transmission line project.
The picture that we received shows the line going directly through the foundation of my brand new house. That was our retirement plan.
We're not going to let them take our land, our property, our home away from us.
The line through our property has made it so we have no choice if this project goes ahead. We are going to have to relocate.
Ian Pisey is just one of a number of residents who will be forced to move if the project goes ahead as planned, as the proposed route will go right through the home he and his wife had planned on spending their retirement in.
A pair of murders occurred in Thunder Bay in January. The first one happened on John Street.
Just after 3:30 p.m. on Sunday, January 22nd, where our police services primary response officers responded to a call for assistance, and there discovered a male in medical distress, quickly determined that this was in fact a weapons and firearm incident, and began attempting both to render assistance to the victim, to identify witnesses, as well as contain the area and begin the search for a suspect.
The shooting occurred at this townhouse on the 700 block of John Street. City police managed to arrest a 17-year-old male from Hamilton just after midnight on Monday and charged him with second-degree murder.
Then, just a week later, Thunder Bay police were dealing with the city's second murder of the year.
First responders were dispatched to the 400 block of Mackenzie Street just after 4 p.m. on Saturday, following reports of a seriously injured man. Police identified the victim as 33-year-old Cody Young. He was rushed to Thunder Bay Regional, but later succumbed to his injuries. Police quickly arrested 24-year-old Matthew James Scavarelli and charged him with second-degree murder. Detective Sergeant Jason Ryback says both men were from Thunder Bay.
It is not drug-related. Again, this was two individuals that were known to each other. There was an interaction that occurred between the two of them at a residence. For all intents and purposes, a fight ensued, spilled out to the street, which resulted in Mr. Young's ultimate death.
In February, Thunder Bay police were expressing major concerns after the regional hospital confirmed that it would stop performing forensic autopsies.
On the sheer front of the number of death investigations in which we participate, the number of homicide investigations in which we participate, the timing is unfortunate.
Detective Inspector Jeremy Pearson says city police were aware that the regional hospital was planning to phase out conducting forensic postmortems, and that move was confirmed last week. Over the past 16 months, around 30% of autopsies involving potentially suspicious deaths were still being done in Thunder Bay. But come June, those deceased persons will all be sent to the Provincial Forensic Pathology Unit in Toronto. Pearson says it will have a major impact on the local force.
We do feel already the impact of a reduced capacity for forensic pathology services here in Thunder Bay, and the absolute cessation of them is just going to make that impact that much stronger.
The suspension of Deputy Police Chief Ryan Hughes was rescinded in late February, and he returned to duty. Hughes was suspended with pay in January of 2022 after a human resources complaint was filed against him. An external police investigation cleared him on all but 2 of the allegations. The 2 claims that were substantiated related to improper disclosure of confidential police information to senior officers and a deputy chief from another police service. Corrective action was taken, and Hughes was reinstated. In March, City Council voted to consider moving ahead with Soccer Northwest's latest proposal for an indoor turf facility next to the community auditorium.
City staff will continue to explore Soccer Northwest's indoor turf facility proposal. City Council voted to continue with the review, and a final report is expected in May. That will include information on a second phase environmental study, a traffic study, and community consultation. Administration says the proposal will likely cost between $24 and $26 million, but a net zero facility will bring in closer to $30 million. Councillor Trevor Gertuga believes at this point, the community just wants somewhere to play.
I mean, I agree we like to make things nice, but I think that, kind of a bare bones type of facility is what the user groups are looking for.
I think bare bones is not the correct way of terming it. I think what you're doing is you're shedding the fat. So inside this facility, you're still going to be able to do everything you could in the previous facility. If anything, this field is actually slightly larger than the previous facility was.
Also in March, things seem to be moving ahead with an indoor tennis bubble at Chapels Park.
These golden shovels mark the beginning of construction for the 6-court air-supported dome facility, which is scheduled for completion in time for the 2023-24 season. The $200,000 from Tennis Canada and Rogers Communications comes on top of an already secured $1 million from the NOHFC and $500,000 from Fednor, along with a $1.5 million agreement of city funding, which is currently being worked out. Thunder Bay Community Tennis Center's Jamie Grieve was overjoyed by the funding and excited for the future of Thunder Bay tennis.
To be able to have, number one, continued year-round play is fantastic. You look at all ages, seniors, adults, juniors, to provide opportunities for everyone to play tennis and develop and be successful. The other thing is for the club to have year-round programming, never have a cancellation again. It's just going to be absolutely fantastic.
It was a sad ending to the search for a missing plane north of Nakina in March, as the crash claimed the lives of 2 young Thunder Bay pilots. Captain Stephen Maxwell, age 26, and Captain Mitchell Frost, age 23, are both being described as having a passion for flying. They were the only occupants on the ZAM Air Services flight from Nakina to Ebmatung First Nation on February 28th. It took searchers 4 days to locate the wreckage of the plane, which went down around 1/3 of the way on its supply run to the remote First Nation. Investigators are still searching for a cause. Maxwell earned his wings in 2018 from the Confederation College Flight Management Program and graduated at the top of his class. Frost graduated from that same program in 2021, and his family has launched a bursary to be awarded annually to a flight student who exudes the same passion and dedication that Frost did. In mid-March, a Thunder Bay police officer was convicted on 3 Police Act charges related to an incident in 2022. Police body cam video showed Constable Peter Haas physically and verbally abusing an Indigenous man at a city bus shelter.
Who the f*** were you with? Who the f*** were you with? I just met him outside. I asked him to buy me smokes inside. Stop f***ing around. I'm not f***ing around. Who was it? I don't know who the f*** it is, man. Jesus Christ. You're walking with them?
Haas pleaded guilty to discreditable conduct, unlawful use of force, and insubordination. City police were seeking his dismissal, But the hearing officer decided to demote Haas from first class to third class constable for 4 months. He also had to undergo training on Indigenous issues and delivered a handwritten apology to the victim involved. In late March, the police board announced the hiring of Darcy Fleury as the city's new police chief.
What I will say about Darcy Fleury that for me is the most significant is I think he is a fundamentally decent man who is thoughtful, kind, and capable of clear thinking and hard choices. And that combination is not common.
Fleury says he doesn't have much experience in Thunder Bay, but he has been keeping a close eye on the news surrounding the police force for quite some time. He believes having open communication within the community is key, as he will be focusing on establishing a strong relationship with all organizations and governments when he arrives.
I enjoy talking to people and getting out there and seeing exactly how we're providing service, if it's appropriate. I always tell the people that I'm talking with, the community governments, tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly. If our office isn't managing what you're asking us to do, then we need to know so we can take appropriate steps to change that and make it better, make the partnerships more efficient and effective. And that's what I think I'm going to bring there.
Fleury would arrive in Thunder Bay in April to begin preparing himself for his new role. We'll have that story and more when TBT News Year in Review continues. Welcome back to TBT News Year in Review. Foundation work began in early April on a long-awaited new steel culvert along River Street.
A large sinkhole developed last May, leading to the discovery of a damaged culvert which could not be repaired. Tyrannus Contracting had the winning bid to install a new multi-plate metal arch over McVicker Creek at a cost of $2.5 million, which is still the projected budget. Currently, they have all the bedrock cleared off and about 75% of the leveling pad poured, which is what the footing for the new arch culvert will sit on. City project engineer Mike Vogrig says that would already be done, but the fast melt caused a slight delay.
So today they had a little bit of water in the hole, so they're spending the morning cleaning all that off. Once that's done, they hope to pour more, finish the leveling pad, and start pouring the actual footing for the culvert.
Vogrig believes River Street will reopen to traffic in late May.
On April 17th, new Police Chief Darcy Fleury began meeting his officers and staff at the Balmoral Police Station.
Thunder Bay's next chief of police arrived late last week and wasted no time familiarizing himself with the service. Chief Designate Darcy Fleury won't take over the role for another month, but will take part in an extensive transition period leading up to the swearing-in ceremony to prepare him for the duties he'll be taking on. Monday was Fleury's first day at police headquarters, where he spent time speaking with cadets, officers, and acting chief Dan Taddeo. Fleury says day one at HQ was beneficial for him in what will be a busy time leading up to May's change of command ceremony.
So it was nice to get that first feel and kind of get an understanding how things operate. So that's going to be the flavor of the week, I believe. We have meetings set up pretty much all week just to do that, to get acquainted with everybody and get an understanding of sort of how things are operating and some of the things that we're working on and things that we want to push forward. So it's been a really good week, really good morning, sorry.
Also in April, City Council and local residents got their first look at the future Science North Science Center planned for the local waterfront.
The $80 million price tag for the proposed Thunder Bay Science Center was revealed at City Hall last night, with City Council members clearly behind the project.
Any community that has a science center is very, very lucky, and the youth are lucky, and the people, anybody of any age, are lucky to get through there.
The presentation providing updates on the project was made by Science North CEO Ashley LaRose. The agency is projecting a $6 million annual economic impact, with 60,000 visitors estimated to come through the center every year. The project is currently in the schematic design phase, with LaRose explaining next steps include seeking funding.
And that will come from all levels of government and the private sector. And so later this summer, we plan to launch a private sector capital campaign here in Thunder Bay. And again, back to that schematic design, we know that our design is sound, our numbers are sound, and then we'll be ready to launch into that campaign midsummer.
In early May, residents across the city were shocked to see the surveillance video of a shootout between several people outside an apartment complex in Westfort.
Security footage shows a man police identify as Iverson Thomas exiting the structure on the right in pursuit of the 3 other suspects before opening fire on them. The 3 other suspects hid behind their vehicle and fired back in response. They then used the vehicle to flee the scene while Thomas escaped by foot. Thunder Bay police officers and the primary response branch were dispatched to the lot on the 200 block of Amelia Street West at 12:45 p.m. on Tuesday. A responding officer observed a male suspect in the area that matched Thomas's description that was provided by witnesses. That allowed for him to be pursued and arrested by officers. Detective Inspector Jeremy Pearson estimates that over 20 rounds of gunfire were exchanged between the suspects.
We look at this and we see a wanton disregard for the safety of the public, for the safety of the community, and that should be of grave concern not only for the police but for all members of this community. We look at that and we see multiple rounds being fired. If you look at the manner in which those firearms are being discharged, the shots are haphazard, and I think that's being generous.
2 of the other suspects were later arrested and charged. Also in May, the province announced it was tripling the funding provided to the DSAB for homelessness prevention.
The funding increase answers years of calls from local leaders and social service agencies for the provincial and federal governments to step up with more housing dollars and other homelessness supports. The funding expansion is a 197% increase, which will remain in place for at least 3 years. MPP Kevin Holland says the large amount of funding was a result of years of advocacy by the DSAB and city leaders.
I really can't put into words how big of a deal this actually is for Thunder Bay and the district. The increase in funding to address the homelessness problem that we're facing across the district, this increase in funding is going to just move mountains in getting that accomplished for our region.
DSAB CAO Bill Bradica called the funding increase historic and says the organization would look to invest much of the increase to build supportive housing, including in district communities outside of Thunder Bay.
At a minimum, we think there's a need for at least 250 units of transitional supportive housing, possibly more. There's more than 750 people on the by names list who are either homeless or accessing homeless prevention type services.
Fort William First Nation elected a new chief in late May, as Michelle Solomon edged out fellow candidate Georgianne Morisseau for the position.
A longtime Fort William First Nation councillor will now be taking the top job.
I feel like next to being a mother and a grandmother, this is the most important role that I'll have in my life.
Michelle Solomon was confirmed as the First Nations new chief on Sunday after a close 12-vote victory over former chief Georgianne Morisseau. Solomon says the close race was definitely a nail-biting experience, but feels honored the community put its faith in her.
Everybody is wanting me to do good work, and I really will strive to make the community proud and for our government to make the well-being of our community that much better and that much stronger.
At the end of May, a buyer was announced for the Thunder Bay Pulp and Paper Mill. U.S.-based Atlas Holdings planned to purchase a local plant from Resolute Forest Products for $220 million. Officials from Atlas expressed excitement about purchasing the plant and said they're the ideal owner to take the operation to its next chapter. The sale was finalized later in the year. The union rep for around 300 workers at the plant welcomed the transaction.
Well, obviously, you're dealing with a company that has the resources to run a mill that size and make the necessary investments. So from that sense, it's a positive in terms of having a company with some clout and be able to properly manage and run the facility.
In some respects, it's a difficult day, but fortunately, the folks who are buying the mill are very impressive, and we get to continue our strong commercial ties with the operation.
The world-famous snowbirds would visit Thunder Bay in June. We'll have that story and more as TBT News Year in Review continues. Welcome back. The Canadian Forces Snowbirds kicked off their 2023 season in early June with a pair of free shows at the local waterfront.
Thousands of residents flocked to the waterfront Sunday afternoon for the second day of the annual Kite Festival and to catch a glimpse of the Canadian Forces Snowbirds' final show in the city. The team once again dazzled audiences with their 30-minute aerial performance. One of the snowbird pilots was very familiar with Thunder Bay skies. Snowbird 6 pilot Captain Stephen Sparks took the aviation program at Confederation College back in 2011 and says it's exciting for him to be back.
Progressing from that and eventually coming back here today is a really cool opportunity for me, right? This is 10 years after graduating from Conn College, and so it's a cool opportunity, and it's really nice to see people again that I haven't seen in a while.
The new Finlandia project was at a standstill in 2023. Property owner Brad McKinnon confirmed in late June that construction would not resume at the site until 2024 at the earliest, due to financial reasons. One main factor is a major legal battle against one of the contractors involved in the renovation of the former Finnish labor temple, who he claims caused the fire that destroyed the original building in 2021.
The Finlandia will be rebuilt, and it will be a legacy building that will stand, for another 100 years. Like I said, that our intentions are sincere to rebuild what was lost, that I urge people to be patient and understand the current situation.
McKinnon said he's already invested about $3.5 million into the reconstruction and wanted to reassure the community that he will see the project through to completion. In late June, City Police made 2 arrests following a homicide on East Mary Street. The victim was 67-year-old Darlene Giba, who died following a serious assault at the Westfort home. Police confirmed the 2 suspects were Giba's family members. 56-year-old Jonna Louise Sonago and 41-year-old Cameron Adamko were both charged with second-degree murder. Detective Inspector Jeremy Pearson couldn't provide many details on what led to the homicide.
In terms of the exact interaction at the house, that's a matter of the ongoing investigation and something that's still very much being reviewed. Our forensic identification unit is still examining the scene. We are still examining and reviewing the postmortem, initial postmortem reports. The final report has yet to come in.
In early July, Thunder Bay police were looking for the driver in a fatal hit and run. The tragic incident occurred on Simpson Street.
Police are asking the suspect in a fatal hit and run Monday afternoon, seen here at Inner City Shopping Center after walking away from the scene, to do the right thing and turn himself in.
You've had time now to think about what's happened and what you're responsible for. You need to make a correct decision now. Get in front of this, because it's not going away. Contact your lawyer and come turn yourself in Thunder Bay Police Station as soon as possible.
A 42-year-old man was killed in the collision, and his female companion was seriously injured. Police later arrested 39-year-old Jonathan Pay Pompey after receiving tips from the public. Construction was fully underway in July on the new Thunder Bay Art Gallery at the waterfront, and the price tag went up again.
Shovels are in the ground and pile drivers are solidifying the foundations at the waterfront site for a project nearly 15 years in the making. Crews have begun construction work for Thunder Bay's new art gallery, a dream that first began in 2009. It's a significant milestone, especially with so many delays since that time, with lease negotiations most recently holding up the work. Construction is expected to take about 2 years, which could mean the 38,000 square foot gallery will open to the public summer of 2025.
It will definitely cost $50 million, and it potentially may cost a bit more.
And construction was also moving along in July on the new correctional complex on Highway 61.
There's hope amongst correction workers in the city, as construction on the new $1.2 billion correctional complex could be ahead of schedule. Earlier this week, Ontario Solicitor General spoke glowingly about the massive new facility and the importance of good relationships with the local corrections union leaders.
Whenever I go to the different facilities across Ontario, because again, I want to listen and learn from them. I want them to know that their voices are being heard.
But local union heads are concerned the new facility still won't address the serious overcrowding in the local correctional system. The new complex will provide space for 345 inmates, and combined with the new 50-bed expansion which opened last year on Highway 61, the total capacity will be 395. As of Tuesday, the district jail and the correctional center had a combined 320 inmates, and that doesn't include prisoners sent elsewhere due to a lack of space.
If we open tomorrow, we'd probably be at pretty close to capacity.
The man who's hoping to become Canada's next prime minister had a campaign-style visit in Thunder Bay in July. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre spoke to a big crowd at the Da Vinci Centre about axing the Trudeau government's controversial carbon tax. Poilievre also expressed his colorful views on the prime minister, who is about to shuffle his cabinet.
After 8 years, life costs more, work doesn't pay, housing costs have doubled. Crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder reign in our streets. At the end of the day, there's one minister who's responsible for it all. He's the minister that's in charge of everyone. The buck stops with him. He is responsible for the higher prices, the higher taxes, the growing crime, the endless corruption. Why don't we shuffle out Justin Trudeau while we're at it? Shuffle him out. Shuffle him out.
In August, a city police officer stood trial, and TBT News had the shocking video of what happened. Stay tuned for that story and more right after this short break. Welcome back. The month of August saw a Thunder Bay police officer on trial for assault causing bodily harm. The disturbing incident was caught on police body cam video.
What the hell, man?
Nothing.
Hey, oh, I'm sorry. Hey, what are you doing? You can't be drinking in public. Knock it off.
The man was punched once in the face and went straight down onto the concrete, bloody and nearly unconscious.
You don't push back on an officer, man. Really? I've seen you fall down and eat pavement. That's gonna keep you down?
The man was taken to hospital by EMS and diagnosed with a fractured cheekbone.
Franco was found guilty by the judge. His sentencing hearing is scheduled for January 5th. Thunder Bay Police announced the city's fourth homicide in August for an incident that occurred on May 20th. 90-year-old Bernie Nibbs was seriously injured after a fall at his home on Elmwood Crescent. He was taken to hospital and died 3 weeks later. City police said they were originally told that the man had fallen down some stairs, but police later learned of allegations that he was pushed. Nibbs' daughter, 63-year-old Mandy Kazoon, was arrested in August and charged with manslaughter. The local tennis community got some disappointing news in late August when it was announced that construction would not begin this year on the new indoor tennis bubble at Chapels Park.
Myself, as a tennis player, I would have loved nothing more than to be playing indoors already this year.
Pasi Pinta, the project lead for the Thunder Bay Community Tennis Center's indoor tennis facility, is conceding that all the ducks are not in a row in time for the project to be completed this fall. The proponents had hoped to complete a land lease and funding agreement with the city before this Monday's council meeting, but the timelines were too tight to meet.
No, I think we've lost that opportunity, and working with the city to get approvals in place to get started this fall and complete it next spring with the installation of the bubble itself, the building package, and paving of the courts for the indoor courts.
On August 28th, a long-awaited transitional housing project on Junot Avenue finally got the funding it needed to move ahead.
$8.7 million from the province's Indigenous Supportive Housing Program is going to the Junot Avenue Transitional Home, a 3-story, 58-bed facility which will offer supportive accommodation to Indigenous youth who are homeless or at risk. Housing Minister Steve Clark was joined by local MPP Kevin Holland to make the announcement.
It's a momentous day and a really wonderful project that will make a real difference in the lives of those young people.
A new school year began at Lakehead University in September, and students got to meet LU's new president, Jillian Siddall.
The woman who will lead Lakehead University over the next 5 years is Jillian Siddall. While her own academic background is in literature, Siddall wants to emphasize the value of Lakehead's broad range of programs at all academic levels.
Students who attend Lakehead University get the richness of being at a comprehensive university, but also the kind of intimacy of being at a smaller university. And my vision is to continue to nurture that. I think we're looking at some growth, both in Thunder Bay and on the Aurelia campus.
Also in September, Mayor Ken Boshkoff faced opposition from council regarding his plan to seek strong mayor powers.
Strong opposition from many city councilors at Monday's meeting regarding provincial strong mayor powers wasn't enough to change Mayor Ken Boshkov's direction.
See this as legislation that is quite destructive to local democracies.
The need for the strong mayor powers, so I will file the letters tomorrow.
Council voted 9-4 against Boshkov pursuing strong mayor powers, though he didn't need their support to move ahead. Some of the powers Boshkov will receive include the ability to fire and hire the city manager, passing or vetoing bylaws with just 1/3 of council support, and proposing his own budget subject to council amendments.
How is firing a city manager going to build a house? How could someone with no background in finance present a $500 million budget, contribute to building a house?
I just expected more from council.
The Thunder Bay Art Gallery provided an update in September regarding the new gallery project on the waterfront.
The community got a sneak peek at the project that's been in the making for close to 15 years. The gallery is a 2-story building that will feature 3 massive display rooms, an outdoor and indoor cafe, classrooms and a lecture theater, a gift shop that is built at the center of the gallery, and hundreds of windows for an open view of Lake Superior and the Sleeping Giant. Newly appointed executive director of the Thunder Bay Art Gallery, Matthew Hills, says the new facility will be a world-class quality gallery that's in the making.
People have had a chance to visit the waterfront and even the construction site, they know how incredible the view is, how incredible this facility will be, and especially the ways it'll reach out to communities part of the waterfront and downtown.
While the construction is well in development, the now $57 million project is expected to be ready by late 2025, and while we are a few years away from the final product, construction on the steel framework will be expected to go up around the turn of the new year, giving the public a better idea of the scope of the project.
River Street finally reopened to traffic on September 22nd after numerous delays replacing a collapsed culvert.
Nearly 17 months after it was forced to close, the section of River Street between Algoma and Peter finally reopened late Monday after paving was finished on the section that was torn up to repair the collapsed culvert. City project engineer Mike Vogrig acknowledges the project took much longer than anticipated.
But we obviously ran into some delays. We had some slow times in the contract that we tried to address as they came along. There were, according to the contract itself, the completion date was mid-July. There were some extensions of time due to extra work and other delays that we ran into that kind of put it into August, but we're still past that time. So,
police were dealing with the city's 5th homicide of the year in late September. 63-year-old Richard Jung died in hospital a few days after an attack that happened on Robertson Street. 24-year-old Randy Andrews was initially charged with aggravated assault, but that charge was then upgraded to second-degree murder. Police confirmed the two were known to each other. Detective Inspector Jeremy Pearson called it an extremely violent attack, but wouldn't reveal if a weapon was used.
At this point, with regard to specifics, all I'm at liberty to say is that we acknowledge that this was an extremely violent incident and that the injuries were the result of a very serious assault. Of course, we're always interested to know anything that the public is aware of, anything they may have heard, or any potential evidence they may be in possession of, as you say, dash cam footage, home surveillance that may have captured this incident. We are, of course, always seeking new information should it be available.
And city police would be investigating another murder in October. We'll have that story and more, so stay tuned. Welcome back to TBT News Year in Review. Premier Doug Ford paid the city a visit in October, making stops at the Thunder Bay Pulp and Paper Mill and the Resolute Sawmill. He said forestry companies are crucial for economic development and getting people to move to Thunder Bay.
There's opportunities to come up here. We have to make sure we create the environment and the conditions for companies to come here and invest. And we created Ontario, not government, because I don't believe government creates jobs. Ontarians created more manufacturing jobs than all 50 states combined. And I told our friends when they came up from Nevada and Arizona and down in Michigan, and they're all saying, what are you doing up here? It's the people.
The Premier's tour stop at the Pulp and Paper Mill came just 2 months after Atlas Holdings finalized their purchase of the operation for $220 million. Canada's industry minister was in Thunder Bay in October, getting a tour of a potential lithium processing site near Lakeshore Drive. Francois Philippe Champagne says he was very excited by what he saw and heard from Avalon Advanced Materials.
This is a good story.
You need to bring everyone here. This needs to go viral.
The Federal Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry was very impressed with the site on Lake Superior. Avalon purchased the former Smurfit Stone property in June, with ambitious plans to build a lithium processing plant and an adjoining industrial parkway here.
Well, today's a fantastic day. Honorable Minister Champagne, who's been the key architect, frankly, to bring critical mineral supply chains to Canada, is visiting our site.
Minister Francois Philippe Champagne has been a strong proponent of the federal government's critical mineral strategy and having Canadian lithium mined and processed here in this country for batteries in electric vehicles.
And to see a brownfield site like that where you have all the utilities, electricity, you have gas, you have a port already, but 25 feet deep is already enough to make sure you can bring the products to the market, and also that you have a railway line. Honestly, if I look at the site in Canada, I would say this is one of the most promising I've ever seen in terms of the possibilities.
City police were investigating the city's 6th homicide of the year in mid-October. Officers were called to an Ogden Street home for what police confirmed as a shooting death.
Thunder Bay police have yet to release any information on the victim other than the fact it was a male. It's suspected the murder took place between 8 p.m. Saturday night and 6 a.m. Sunday morning. The 300 block on Ogden Street has since been taped off, with officers remaining on scene. While the investigation is still ongoing, Detective Inspector Jeremy Pearson confirmed that a firearm was involved in the incident. He goes on to say that investigators believe the city's latest homicide is related to the ongoing drug trade.
While I understand and certainly sympathize with public concern for any homicide involving a firearm, I do offer that in terms of our investigative theory leading us down the line that this was not a random act and is not someone at large with random ill intent.
The victim was later identified as a Toronto man, and 25-year-old Russell Braden Muniz was arrested 4 days later and charged with first-degree murder. In early November, a father and son, 61-year-old Brian Seuss and 29-year-old Nick Seuss, pleaded guilty in the Alyssa Turnbull case, but they would not serve any more jail time on the charge of committing an indignity to a body after striking a plea deal and leading police to Turnbull's remains in Kaministiquia.
That joint submission was arrived at after extensive discussion with the family and investigators. The aim of that joint submission was to bring Alyssa Turnbull home to her family, and that is what has been accomplished. Without the cooperation of Nicholas Seuss, police would likely have never located Alyssa Turnbull's remains, despite their exhaustive efforts to do so. The Crown is duty-bound to honor its agreement with defense.
Alyssa's family read into the record their victim impact statements, moving statements expressing anger and excruciating pain, but also painting a picture of Alyssa as a woman, young woman who was vibrant, full of humor, full of life.
In mid-November, city officials set an ambitious goal of building 2,200 homes in just 3 years.
It's a historic push to build more housing in Thunder Bay.
A day that we should mark as maybe the start of a new era.
During the news conference, city officials stressed the need for funding, with the expected mining boom estimated to create 3,000 to 4,000 jobs in the region in the next 5 years. Groups like the Thunder Bay District Social Services Board and Lakehead University have already written letters of support for the Housing Accelerator funding. It comes as Thunder Bay recently surpassed its provincial housing target for 2023, one of only 9 Ontario municipalities to do so.
As of October, 290 units issued, and others since then, many others since that time.
City Councillor Rajni Agarwal had her council pay docked for 1 month in November due to a heated argument with citizens earlier in the year.
A tense discussion on Monday saw council agree that Councillor Rajni Agarwal violated the code of conduct after a June dispute with neighbors on Beverly Street who were carrying out grading work on their property. The recommendation came from the Integrity Commissioner, who called Agarwal's behavior confrontational and harassing.
Instead of acknowledging that her conduct was out of line, Councillor Agarwal has dug in, defending her behavior, deflected onto others, such as city staff and the police.
The incident saw Agarwal raise her middle finger while allegedly claiming to represent the city.
but I stand very strongly with my actions.
Agarwal was ruled out of order by meeting chair Shelby Chung a number of times during the discussion, who told council they need to focus on the penalty recommended, not the facts of the case. That led to this moment.
Councillor Agarwal, I'm sorry, please turn off your microphone.
Somebody once told me, he says, when you're in a hole, stop digging. And perhaps that's some good advice.
In late November, City Council voted to push ahead with an indoor turf facility next to the community auditorium.
During Monday's meeting, City Council overturned last week's decision to cap construction costs on the proposed turf facility to $30 million, opting instead for a $38 million financing plan brought forward by Councillor Trevor Gertuga. That figure is expected to cover a facility that would meet the Ontario Building Code, but not the environmental certification Council previously pushed for. Last week's $30 million cap was proposed by Councillor Mark Bentz, who warns this isn't the first time Council's considered a price tag similar to what Gertuga put forward.
Just like many around the table last term were prepared to spend 35 to 40 until the rubber hit the road, and we didn't move forward. We actually backed out of a tender. Not a good look on a community.
Soccer Northwest was the organization that proposed the now preferred site next to the community auditorium and remains confident the hangar-style facility can be built for under $30 million. Speaking during the meeting, Soccer Northwest President Michael Veneziali even said his group would be willing to bridge the financing gap if the tender comes in higher.
In early December, Thunder Bay Police Staff Sergeant Mike Dimony was arrested and charged by the OPP following a 2-year investigation. The Attorney General had asked the OPP to probe allegations of misconduct within the force. Dimony was charged with 2 counts of assault involving separate incidents and victims in 2014 and 2016. He was also charged with breach of trust and obstruction of justice from an incident in 2020. Police Chief Darcy Fleury declined to comment, but the force issued a statement confirming that Dimony is on leave and saying the charges are deeply concerning. Dimony will appear in court in January. Also in early December, the City Parking Authority announced some major changes for the costs, the times, and the locations for parking fees.
A new finance plan could have a big impact on how much you pay for parking.
Really at the heart of it, there is no such thing as free parking.
The new parking finance plan will be discussed at City Council on Monday, coming with it significant changes, which includes higher rates and fees. That includes street meter costs jumping 50 cents hourly to $2, with a 25-cent increase every other year beginning in 2025. Monthly parkade fees would also go up by almost 50% to $90. Another one of the biggest changes includes charging parking at lots currently free to the public, including down by the marina. Corporate Services General Manager Karen Lewis says these measures will ensure parking operating costs are covered.
It's either paid for by the user or it's paid for by the taxpayer.
The feared layoffs at the Lac des Îles Palladium mine were confirmed in December. Officials from Impala Canada broke the news to their staff that 95 people have received layoff notices. The mine, located off Highway 527, lost nearly 10% of its 1,100 employees. The decision to cut the workforce was made so the mine would be able to continue operating after palladium prices plummeted 50% over the past year. Impala officials insisted that LDI will remain a significant mining operation. And now, as the new year arrives, local residents are hoping 2024 will bring more good news than bad. TBT News will continue covering all the major news events in the year ahead and deliver them to you. But for now, thanks for joining us for this recap of the top stories of 2023.